Alright, so it seemed a few people, or kind of a lot of people, wanted this video, so I'm going to kind of teach you how to dial in your brakes. I just did those ones yesterday, so I'm going to have to do my old bike. So I always start with, before I get into anything, I just want to say that I learned all of what I know about brakes from Zach Zuschel, because originally I felt his brakes and I always wanted my brakes to feel like that, so I asked him and taught me how to do everything. And I know that there's a lot of people at the skate park that'll feel my brakes and they think that they're great. So if you want your brakes to feel awesome, just follow this and it should be pretty easy. If you have questions, you can ask them. But I start with my bike upside down. It seems to be the easiest, because the only thing that you're going to be really worrying about is the two spring kind of parts right here. That's going to adjust how close the brake pad is to the rim, and then your brake lever, and that you can adjust how much you want it to pull or less, whatever like that. You just need two tools. So you're going to need Tri-Flow at some point. You're going to need just for them to feel smooth, and then 13mm open end wrench and a 5 of an Allen key. You're just going to take these two tools, and first you obviously want to check to see if your brakes are bad in the first place. So what I usually do is, if you come down here, you can kind of hear it. So they're kind of hitting at different times. I don't know if you can really hear that very well, but you want to look and see if they're hitting at the same time. So one's usually closer than the other. So if you see this side is hitting before this side. If we come into the light more, you might be able to see this. But you can kind of tell. So if I start to pull them real slow, now this one's touching the rim, and this one still has kind of a gap right in there. So that's what we need to fix. So this one just needs to be a little closer to the rim. So that's pretty easy. By what I show you how to do, you should be able to figure it out if one side's really further away and the other side's really close or something. So basically, all you want to do is come over here. So we said that this side needs to be a little closer. So it's pretty easy. If you just put Allen in there, make sure it's nice and tight and it's not going anywhere, because you don't want to strip this out. And then set this up on here. If you look at the brake pad, if you get a little closer on the actual brake pad, you can see that if I turn this one way, it's gonna move it one way. I turn it in more, the brake pad goes in more. So we want it in more, so if we just turn this a little bit in, you can see that the brake pad's just a little bit closer than it was before. And you can then just there's a lot of trial and error that comes into it with this. So I just moved it a little closer, so now they already feel better. And what I'm gonna do is just make it a little less pull, so you can see that they're pretty much hitting at the same time. I'll double check again. It looks like this side needs to be a little closer now, and that's going to happen. You're going to have to switch each side, because just the littlest movement is going to move them a lot. But once you get them dialed in, you're never going to be able to want them to feel bad again, because you won't be able to stand it. It's terrible. So, yeah. So now this side, we're going to need to move it a little closer to the rim again. And it's the same thing. So you just put this Allen key in there, take the box on, or open end, and then you can just see this, if you look at this little dot right there. Here, you gotta move for the light. Let me see it. So if you look at the little dot that's right there, you can kind of see that. If you just move that towards the brake pad, that's going to bring the pad closer to the rim. And if you move it away from the brake pad, so if you move it that way, it's going to bring the pad further from the rim. So that kind of makes it pretty easy to just judge. So we'll just take it, move it a little closer, make sure it's tight with the Allen key. And then you can look. And it looks like I moved it a little too much, so I'll pull it a little bit further away. Okay. Now again, we'll check, see if it's good. and you can hear it. Like if you bring the camera close to the brake pads, you can really hear. You can only hear the brake pads hitting the rim, so that's how you know they're hitting at the same time. If you hear like you can kind of hear it's like it's like at the same time, but if you hear it like, it's gonna be different times. And whenever people's brakes feel like mushy and like they're like spongy to pull, that's usually because they're not hitting at the same time. Like if you've ever felt my brakes, or especially Zach Zuschel's brakes, they feel like they click into place, and it's the craziest thing ever. So now when we look, these are literally hitting at the exact same time, and we didn't even have to do that much work. So now it just comes down to the pull. These have just a little too much pull. So if you come in on the brake lever to see what's up, like you can see how much the lever's pulling, and if that's too much for you, you can either do this one or this one. This one's a little harder to do, but you can just basically take this, and if you loosen it so that they both move, if you bring the thicker one further away from the lever, you're gonna have less pull. So now they only move that much, and they're a little stiffer if you like that. I don't know if you. And then that's another thing. If you like your brakes really easy to pull, what you're gonna want to do is this is all like trial and error, like I said. If you want to bring them both further away and make sure they're exactly the same, they're probably going to be a little easier, a little harder to pull. And if you bring them both really close and the same distance from the rim, they're going to be easier or harder to pull. It's weird which one it is, because I've tried both and I still haven't figured it out. But if I move this one the same amount this way and this one the same amount that way, they're going to be probably easier to pull because they're further away. So then when you go back up to your brake lever, it's going to feel super easy to get them like to hit the rim if you just want to feather them all the time. I like mine a little harder to pull, so these are perfect just like this. But if you want them to be like super dialed, take your time on all this and clean your rims, clean your brakes, make sure your cables are all good. That's a really important step. So we'll do Tri-Flow next. You don't need to use a lot at all, and make sure you don't use too much, and don't do it. Thank you, phone. And don't do it too often at all, because it collects dirt. If you use like way too much Tri-Flow or way too much Simple Green, it can attract a lot of dirt, and you don't want that because that'll clog up your cables and it'll get super dirty and just disgusting. So you just take this, pull your brake lever, and that little cable right there, all you have to do is squeeze a few drops on there. And you can see it pouring down. And then just like tilt your bike so that the cable can let it run down. And then you want to make sure you get these cables. So you pull your brakes so you can see the cables, and then just drip like 3 or 5 drops into there, and then come on this side so you can do the other side, and then you can just drip some in there. It's not too hard, and this way the Tri-Flow is already going into there just because of the way the cable is. And if you want to flip your bike like this, you'll get some down in there. And then usually what I'll do is I'll put a little bit on this side too, just because it won't go all the way down, so you got to tilt it like this. And then just put a few drops on. You definitely don't need too much. And then if you have, my brakes aren't like this on this bike, and they weren't like this on my newer bike now, but if you come down by like where the springs kind of are, my springs, you can't see them, but on some, they don't have these little covers, and you can see the actual springs. And if you have that, where right here you see the springs, sometimes you're going to want to like lube those up with some Tri-Flow, just because it'll make them smoother and they won't get all clogged up too. But you don't need to do that if you don't see the actual spring. And then, since you're done with Tri-Flow, your brakes should feel smoother. But you got to make sure your rim is clean, because one of the reasons that clear brake pads will squeak is if they're grabbing the rim right. And if your rim isn't clean, it's not going to grab it right, so they won't stick. Your brakes are just going to slide, and you don't want that at all, because then what's the point of them feeling good? So you can just go around there. I just use like a soft t-shirt, and it works perfect just because you don't want to scratch up your rim or anything. And then you can just Put some Simple Green on it. Make sure not to use too much of this too. And then if you just put something under your seat, it makes it a lot easier. Like that. So then you can just run your wheel down and put your finger on the tire, or not the tire, the rim, and get it just coated in Simple Green. You can see how much dirt there is on there now. So you want to use like a different part. And then clean the edge a little bit. I'll come over on this side and just get it. And you can see all the dirt, like you can see how bad it would have been with the brakes like that. And I'll spin the wheel and pull my brakes like once or twice just to get a little Simple Green on the actual pads. I think that kind of cleans them a little bit too. But you don't want to just leave it like this, because you'll get a lot more dirt on your rim than you would just if you didn't do anything. You want to make sure you dry them off too. So just after you've done that, just take a clean paper towel, and you can see how much more dirt there is now. And then just do the same thing on the other side. Make sure that they're clean. It's pretty good. And there's not much else to it. I mean, it's a lot, like I said, it's a lot of trial and error, so you're gonna have to like do it for yourself, figure out what you like, what you don't like, but spend the time to do it, because it's definitely worth having your brakes feel good. And you can hear them now, they sound perfect. And you can see they're both hitting at the same time, and it's, you can see one side. Here, we'll bring in the light more. They just sound perfect. You can tell by sound a lot. But you want to make sure that that's just like basic brake pad stuff for the upper like cables and stuff for your gyro. I honestly don't know much about that. I haven't had problems. If you have your bike like good and you don't destroy it, it should stay pretty nice. But just make sure none of your cables are like super loose or they're all bent, because sometimes they can get like pulled out like or something. Like if this gets pulled out and it gets stuck there, they're gonna feel like terrible. So you just want to make sure that like all the cables are in properly and that everything's tight down here. They should stay pretty good. And you can see if I pedal my back wheel around, I mean, they stop pretty good. You can hear my other bike too. It's like the same thing, because I can't, once you have your brakes like how you want them, you won't be able to go back. And these are just about perfect. You can hear them. And they feel perfect to me. It all depends on personal preference though. I mean, someone might like their brakes to be really easy to pull. I know that there's some guys that like them really hard to pull because they don't want to like accidentally squeeze them for like a manual. If you like run your finger on your lever, which that's why I like them a little harder to pull, because I always ride with one finger on my lever. So you don't want to be in a manual and just all of a sudden stop. So that's basically it. The basics of brake maintenance. Keep your rims clean. Keep them lubed up, your brake cables. Make sure to like, if your wheel moves, you're gonna have to straighten your wheel, and don't go and adjust your brakes if your wheel moves right away. Make sure you move your wheel back into the like, so it's straight, because if you adjust your brakes, then they're gonna be adjusted for a crooked, out of true wheel. So make sure your wheel is like nice and center before you adjust your brakes, because then they'll feel perfect whenever your wheel is straight. Yeah. That's about all I have to say about that. Yeah. So go tune in your brakes, make sure they're perfect. Shout out to Zach Zuschel for helping me keep my brakes dialed, because I would have no idea how to do this without him. So good luck, guys.